so I have
live streaming is on.
So I have a couple agenda topics. The first one is an overview of the project plan, which I think will take about 20 minutes, and an overview of funding opportunities to make this project a success, which will probably take maybe 7 minutes is my guess. And those are the two agenda topics I have. Does anyone else have any agenda topics that they want to make sure gets included? Oh, don't all speak at once, you know. Okay.
Pulling up the notes here.
I did have a, I guess, slightly lateral question. You guys talking to Max about design work, or is it something else? Because I think I was speaking to him this morning, and he mentioned he was going to speak with someone from Common Stack.
So is this an agenda topic? Like you want to talk about designers?
No, yeah, I mean, if that is something that you know you're looking at, then sure, I would love to talk about that.
Okay. How long do you think we should talk about it for?
5 minutes, no more.
Okay,
I think
perfect.
It's a little early in the game to, yeah.
That's a good call. Anybody else? Okay, cool. I mean, if some ideas come up and you're like, oh, hey, I want to spend 5 minutes on this, don't be afraid to just pop into the notes and put it in the agenda, because we should have some extra time, or we might end up ending this call early, which happens. Okay, so overview of the project plan. Let's dive into I think the best place to start is actually the 1.0 spec. So let me see if I can pull that up here. So the goal of this project, and maybe even the goal of Common Stack itself, is really to get people playing with this concept of taking a circular economy around a common good that already exists, right? Like these circular economies already exist, where there's people who donate to a cause, and then there's people who make decisions about how to spend those donations, and then there's people receiving those donations to do work for the cause, right? This is a circular this is an economy that already exists, but we want to encapsulate that economy with a bonding curve and give the people who are donating and the people who are receiving funds tokens that will incentivize them to be part of the decision-making process and incentivize them to make good decisions. Because if the economy grows, because of the bonding curve's deterministic price functionality, we can actually make the token value go up. And if the economy shrinks, then the token value will naturally go down. And this is straight up math. We can model this circular economy that's wrapped in a bonding curve. We can model this whole thing in CADCAT. And that's a good thing, because it's very complicated and there's a lot of parameters to tweak to optimize this thing. So, and that is in the end, the real goal of the Commons simulator, is to allow people to play with optimizing these circular economies and understand the value of CADCAD to design token economies in a robust and legitimate way. The same way that we would design physical systems like a building, where you simulate it first and then you build it. So that's kind of the intention behind this project. The other piece is that we want to make it fun, right? So we're trying to overlay a really cool narrative on top that makes it kind of a competition. Who can design the best circular economy and optimize it so that it creates a sustainable funding stream and the economy grows? So the first screen will be kind of allowing people to choose which cause they want to support. The person who donates the most to the Gitcoin grant actually gets to pick the first cause that we focus on. But you know, it can be any kind of cause. We imagine that it'll be mostly like you know, some mix between Ethereum infrastructure and like global causes, but we'll see. So we want to design a first screen where people choose the narrative that they want to follow, basically. And then the next screen and every screen after this will have two inputs that both result in an output, and an individual output. So the next screen is about the community. Well, maybe I should stop. Does anyone have any questions about the first screen, which is just like choosing a community? Okay, then I'll keep running and rambling. So the next one is the community. The two inputs here will be the number of hatchers, the number of people that initialize the community, and the number of proposals per some unit time, whether it's first month, first year, we'll have to see. And the hatchers input will output a model of the hatchers and how the hatchers are actually related to each other. So we're going to use CADCAD allows us to build a lot of interesting like assumptions into it, so that these guys can just tweak a parameter. And this assumption is that when one hatcher makes a decision or makes an action, it influences other actors in the system. And this graph will show how they're connected to each other. The next one is proposals. And so the number of proposals, every hatcher will actually have a pre-assigned feeling about each proposal. Like how much do they like the proposals? And so we can submit a little bit of a graph that shows how much they like each of the proposals that are submitted in the first month.
Yeah, and that's kind of like when Griff asked earlier, like, what's your favorite Gitcoin grant? This is just like putting that down into a matrix of, you know, I really like this one, I kind of like this one, I don't like this one at all. Sentiment. Yeah,
exactly. And the goal here is to show people, hey, you can start making assumptions on these things and modeling people's behavior based off of these assumptions. Really showing the value of CADCAD. And then there will be advanced parameters that will be in the final version where people can. There's other parameters that we're assuming for people that if they really want to, they could tweak these. And also there will be optional outputs, other graphs that we can show how the community is initialized. The next screen, and please, anyone like Jeff just did, please interrupt me if you have any questions. The next screen is about defining the hatch. In fact, maybe I can zoom in here. So the hatch is the people who are the hatchers. They put money in to initialize the economy. And there'll be two inputs. The input number one is the vesting time for the commons, for the hatchers tokens. So when the hatchers initialize the economy, they get tokens, but their tokens are locked for a certain amount of time. And the user, the player, will get to choose that amount of time. And then they'll get a vesting curve graph. The next one is the amount that's being donated to the cause. So like when they initialize the economy, a percentage of the money goes to the bonding curve to collateralize the token that's created. And the other percentage goes to a DAO, which token holders control. And those monies are that money is dedicated to furthering the cause, right? And the output after they decide the hatch tribute will to actually run the hatch and say, okay, this is how much money you just raised. This is how much money went to back the economy and how much money went to support the cause. And then there'll be some advanced parameters that will help make more sense of some of the things I said, but I'm just gonna kind of cruise through the advanced parameters and go to the next page if no one has any questions there. Fabio, no questions? When I have a heat check to make sure that like what I'm saying makes sense.
Yeah, I do understand. You can follow.
Okay. I'm so deep into this stuff, I forget if I can't tell if I'm talking gibberish sometimes.
Can I jump in real quick?
Mm-hmm.
This is Jay. So I was reading this document, actually, this, I forget what you call it, the screen, the user story. And and I was like imagining that, maybe there's a higher up level that helps the user, because I feel like there is and I said this before, there's like a nomenclature thing here where you guys have your own language and regular human beings don't speak this language. So, but I was thinking maybe I could just like make comments on this document to just say, because I'm a little bit of an outsider to your group and I don't know your nomenclature. So I might just make some comments directly on this document and just say, I'm lost here, I'm kind of here. And that's not me saying to you, this is how it should be. It's just me saying to you, I'm lost or something like that.
That would be so helpful, Jay. So helpful, because as Griff said, when you're in the rabbit hole, it's hard to remember what jargon doesn't exist outside that rabbit hole. And I do think we have some narrative tweaking, so that would be really appreciated.
And maybe it's just me pointing to the places where you're kind of assuming I know what you're talking about. Should I do that right in this document as a comment or something? Yeah,
and you can even do it during this meeting.
Okay. Well, I actually have to step off because I have another call in about 5 minutes. So I apologize for that. I'll be back next week. And good luck with all your granting.
Sure. Yeah, that would be much appreciated, Jay. And I would love to run some like visualizations. And sometimes I draw these things out to explain them, not in text and not in the jargon. So I'd be happy to iterate on that with you a little bit. Yeah. Feel free to drop those comments in.
And it's easy for me to point out where I get confused because I'm like constantly confused. So that's okay. I'll see you guys next week.
Bye, Jay.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks. Take care.
Bye.
If I may follow up on this very briefly, I'm also interested in participating in this process because I also, when I joined like almost last year, when I was first introduced to this concept, it was kind of a big thing to swallow. There's a we don't have a sort of a, I don't think we have a narrative problem. It's more like a terminology. We're introducing new terminology into the space, and we just have to present it the right way. The thing is, if it was just, you could just sort of try and explain things a little different. But here, you have to introduce new concepts to people, and people don't like things that are different. So I would definitely love to help out in some way, if nothing, to maybe start a document that's just like a glossary that explains all of these big words and what do they mean in like more simple terms. If that's something that you believe is adequate.
It's totally
It's definitely something.
Go ahead, Griff.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say we do have a glossary doc, and we started putting some of these terms in, but as our narrative was evolving, it was hard to keep that up to date with all the other documents and writing. But I think it is really beneficial to have someone outside of the eye of the storm helping with that glossary definition, or at least the trying to map it onto things that already exist, because people do a lot of pattern matching. If you say it's like the Uber of this, they're like, oh, I get it. So it's kind of like drawing those comparisons and analogies to existing economic systems or fundraising systems. And yeah, I would love to have your eyes on that, Hadley. I'll send you over the document. It's probably a year out of date.
Bounce it off me. I'm pretty much, like I say, I'm easily confused, which is like a talent of mine. So there won't be any problem getting me confused in a state of confusion. So I can reason from that viewpoint. But basically, also, I don't think it's a red alert issue in the sense that we're not trying to pitch this to like people on the street. This is like the Ethereum meta community is very open to these ideas, and the very fact that it's some kind of commons thing is very, very interesting, and it will get people to listen. But still, it's something that we might need to have some work done on.
In the end, that is the
Anyway,
core. That is the core goal of this project. It is to introduce this concept to the Ethereum community and to people outside the Ethereum community. And so the real goal, it's great to hear you and Jay both saying, hey, we really need to work on like making this accessible, because that is one of the major goals of this project.
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. Finish.
Yeah, no, that's it. I was just going to keep going.
Yeah, keep going. Don't let me keep you.
Okay. Thank you guys for interrupting, though, because it makes it more fun for me not to just be ranting at you, right? So please, I welcome the interruptions. But screen 3, this is where we define the augmented bonding curve. So you can see we're trying to break this up into easily digestible screens. First screen is community. Second screen is the concept of a hatch, which is the initialization of the bonding curve. This third screen is the bonding curve itself. And this is where people start to see a curve, because after the hatch is when the curve actually exists. So people get to choose the curvature of the curve, which is basically the shape, right? So how flat it is. And when they move the slider, they should see a curve where that's able to be interacted with, and they can see the curve move. And then they'll also get to see a starting price. So like we'll pick a price. The initial price will just be 10 cents. And as they make the curve flatter or more curved, they'll see how it changes what the price is after the hatch. And then so after that input, they'll also get to see what the exit tribute is. Exit tribute is basically every time someone leaves the internal economy and takes money out by selling the bonding curve token, the commons token. Anytime someone sells the commons token, there's a fee that is paid to the funding pool. So whenever someone leaves, that hurts the economy, but they're also making a donation to the funding pool, which helps the economy at the same time. So it's kind of this balance. And they get to choose what the percentage is for that exit tax, as it's sometimes called. The next screen is going to be I think probably the biggest challenge, because we have one screen to talk about conviction voting. And conviction voting is an off-the-wall fucking like crazy governance system that no one's ever done before, where voting works totally different than what people are used to. And it's hard to even call it voting. It looks more like signaling that has impact, right? But basically, there's two inputs for conviction voting, because I don't want to go into this call trying to explain conviction voting. I'm just going to beg you guys to look that up and read our document on the article Jeff wrote about conviction voting. But basically, yeah.
Small question: are we running? Because I remember way back when, almost a year ago, it was a question whether we'll use conviction as the term. Is it conviction or momentum, or have you guys decided which way you will sort of explain it? What's the official term you will use?
Conviction. We tried to find another term that didn't sound like we were dealing with people in prison, but
yes.
but we couldn't find a better term, unfortunately.
Fine. You can. It's a new term. You can whitewash it. You can sort of go.
Yeah.
You can roll with it.
Listen, just
Sorry,
don't
go
drop don't drop the soap in conviction voting, okay? Like that's the most important thing. Like, no. So conviction means two things, unfortunately. It also means how convinced are you about a topic, right? So
Yeah.
so they have two parameters for conviction voting, even though there are many other parameters that they could set in the advanced tab. It's basically alpha, but instead of alpha, we're actually going to use alpha is a very abstract term that's used in our formulas, but we're going to say how many days does it take to reach 80% of the total voting power, which is max conviction. So there's a time delay when you vote in conviction voting. If you don't change your vote, the voting power slowly grows at a decreasing rate over time. So it might take 10 days to reach the 80% of the max conviction, or it might take a year to reach 80% of the max conviction. You get to choose this when you're optimizing your system. So it's kind of like the delay in the growth or the speed of the growth of your voting power. And we have a simulation, the conviction voting simulation that I think you're pretty familiar with, Pavle, that Spunet made. That will be interactive there. And then the next input is beta, and beta is basically the max proposal amount that can ever be passed in one proposal. So if all of the tokens were voting on accomplishing one proposal, what is the max percentage of the pot that proposal could be where it would still pass? And then we would show kind of this threshold graph, which unfortunately there's not a good picture in this spec yet, but it's a to-do to add this. And then, so once they've picked, so now we have these 5 screens, right? And once they've picked those 10 parameters, they have a waiting screen, because then we start running CADCAT. All of those graphs can be made in JavaScript, and we can just use the data that they give to run that math. But what we can't do with JavaScript and what we can do with CADCAT is actually run a full simulation where we keep track of every action that is made, and we tell the random group of users to start making actions, the agent-based simulation, and they start behaving, they start doing stuff, right? And we can track 2 things that we want to show the users, and we also want the players, that the players are competing on, right? So the 2 graphs that we want to show them that we can track magically with this economy is the amount of money that is in the reward DAO, sorry, not reward DAO, the funding DAO, right? The DAO that is donating directly to causes. We can track that growth over time, and the funding DAO's balance over time, if it looks like a sideways, if it looks like this, where it slowly goes up and then has like a sharp down, the sharp down is basically passing a proposal, and the slow up is the exit tributes. So if it looks like this and goes sideways for a long time, then it looks great. If it looks like this, one big proposal gets passed and then no other, and then one more proposal, and then goes sideways for a long time, like that means that they're not actually doing any good work. They're not passing proposals. The thing isn't growing. That's kind of what a failed result looks like. And so we'll want to somehow figure out a way to score these results and give someone like a score on how their funding DAO did. And then the other the other parameter that we want to look at is the actual price of the token. So what's really cool with bonding curves is you can, because there's no liquidity issues and we don't have a secondary market because the tokens are non-transferable, we actually know exactly what every user's behavior will result in changing the price. This is by far the most incredible thing about bonding curves, is that we can actually, with certainty, say how agents' behaviors affect the price of a token. And so we can display this graph where every agent's behavior actually affects the price, and we can map the price over time. And obviously the highest price would win, right? We want to have the price will be, hopefully, I think we'll discover that the higher prices will be correlated with the better results of the funding DAO. But they may not be perfectly correlated. There may be some people that get a higher score with like how many projects their DAO is funding and how much activity is there than the price, and there might be people who have great prices, but their funding DAO isn't that good. So like it'll be really interesting to see how those things correlate, and then we will score both of those things and give people a top leaderboard, so that people who, and we might have multiple leaderboards, best overall score, best score for this, best score for that. We may try to come up with other ideas that we want to rank people's results in. And then that's the competition. So they pick 10 parameters, they get to a screen, they pick 2 parameters per screen for 5 screens. Then they get to a waiting screen where we show them some more graphs and run CADCAD. And then the CADCAD pops out these 2 charts to just give them the results. And then they get to actually see how they rank versus everybody else. And hopefully we can make this fun and addictive. Okay. So that's it. That's the project plan. Any quick questions, or should I just go to our funding opportunities?
Right. I have a couple of questions, comments. I need to drop out 5 to 12 because at 12 I have a meeting. But in general, I get the idea, but I have a couple of holes. So first is, how is the first screen related to all the others, meaning the community part with the simulations? It feels, at some point I had the feeling that the simulations is something which is separate. You just play around with the values and you get some output. Which I think in parentheses, the key there will be also make people understand what they're seeing. As a result, not just the score. That might be the main goal. It depends also what you want to achieve, but I think it would be interesting also to make it easy to read the graphs in some ways and not have to interpret them. If you don't have some knowledge, you will not be able to. But back to the main question. So then I thought this is something which kind of is independent. You just play with some parameters and then you get graphs, and you can get a score and you will be ranked about that. But how does that relate to the community part? And also, is there some way, some other parts of this app or website where you actually have to enter all this data, or is that coming from somewhere? Is that coming from Gitcoin, or how is that page built up, the community part?
Okay, so the community part is basically setting the behaviors of the agents. You're defining the number of agents that are acting within the system, and you're defining how many. Well, it's really just all agents, because the proposals are also sort of an agent in a way, right? And then you're basically defining how those agents, how many agents are in your simulation. So it's a very important input for running the simulation. But as far as like the mechanisms, or like the stack depth, or like how the website is structured, basically we're running a server that is running CADCAD, which is a differential equations machine. And maybe Jeff can explain it in better words than me, but it's a simulation machine. Think of like MATLAB, or I don't know, I'm a chemical engineer, so I know Aspen and a few other like simulation tools that are in normal engineering space, where you can see what happens and you can kind of input some random numbers that may affect the outcome. And with CADCAD, you can even run this simulation 200 times and find the max, the min, and the average results, right? But for this use case, we're just going to give them one result, one simulation, where they are basically picking the initial, they're designing the initial conditions, and the community and the agents that are acting within the community are part of the initial conditions, and then running the simulation and seeing what happens.
And I think I can add on.
Go ahead.
Perhaps I can also answer. I think part of your question was, what does the definition of the community and the community purpose have to do with the actual simulation later? And I think mostly it's kind of storytelling. It's giving people, rather than talking about network ontologies and network graphs of participants and proposals and so on and so forth, it gives people a much more tangible understanding of this system when they put it in a context that they care about. If that's orphans in Barcelona, for example, this is now, rather than participants and proposals, it can be donors or people who live in the neighborhood who want to fund and invest to solve this community problem and submit proposals on how that can be best carried out, et cetera, et cetera. So maybe a solution to that is to carry that kind of community example further through the simulation, rather than just talking about it at the beginning and then jumping into kind of our technical lingo of agents and proposals, because I think that's where we sometimes lose people outside of the technical spaces that understand these ontologies. Just trying to bring the storytelling through. Is that kind of what you meant, Fabio?
The connect for me right now. Are they on?
Guys,
Connection is breaking up a lot.
I have to go, but it was nice talking to you, and I'll write up some of my thoughts later in the chat.
Sounds good, Pablo.
Okay.
Bye, Pablo.
Talk to you soon.
Hey,
Bye.
Yeah.
Bye-bye. Thanks. In any case, I think I got it now. I think I got it now. I think I initially understood this differently, but I think, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, what you're trying to do is you're still after some initial values for variables for the simulation, but instead of saying give me the number of actors, you're trying to give put a narrative behind that, so that people who don't have to think in terms of math, but in terms of what they're actually passionate to support.
Exactly.
Okay, cool.
And
well, then I got it.
And for us, for the first month, we will not be doing any narrative. We will be, it's kind of cut out of our MVP scope. This MVP scope is that 1.0 document with all the narrative taken out and just like more math focused. And it's a 1-page document that really explains the goals from the math side and from the website side. So
cool. All right. Well, I have to drop out at this point as well. So thanks a lot. I'm certainly more clear here. I'm still not very clear, but that's probably it was a time
Yeah,
an issue about the
one-
tasks which
yeah,
need to be done.
I pasted the milestones in the CS Dev team. Those are the milestones that we need to accomplish, and the funding that we receive will go to the people who complete those milestones. Is what I'm.
I see.
So there's just before you leave, Fabio. Do you have Python experience and
Yeah, I did Python, but some years ago, but professionally. So I was writing web pages with Django, and I've also written a couple of years ago some simulations with What was it?
Panda?
Python and no, Panda came later.
Okay.
It was a bit before that. SciPy, or I don't remember the package name. But it was an actor-based simulation for an economic system as well. But
Nice.
that's a couple of years ago. So, and I'm currently writing in Go and JavaScript. So my Python is rusty, but
Okay. Well, I don't want to make you miss your meeting. I want to respect your time. So thank you so much, man. And
thank you guys.
we'll chat more.
And congratulations for setting up this project. Pretty cool. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks, man.
Much appreciated.
It's just you, me, and Juliet.
Nice. Core crew. I also have to run in a couple of minutes, meeting with Chris to get some other couple of things done.